All for One is interesting. Throughout the entire story of My Hero Academia, All for One has been the most secretive character Horikoshi has created, ensuring that we know nothing about who he is and what he wants. The little information that we have about All for One is that he was alive and well in the initial stage of Quirks, and ever since then he has had a plan to take over the world. Living to see over 120 years old, gaining in strength and power, and networking with other like-minded individuals all across the world, All for One is setting up to be the scariest villain in the entire series, making it so much more important the words that he says from his mouth, because everything he says is perfectly worded with zero hiccups. So if All for One says if he gets his hands on Star and Stripe's quirk then it's game over for the world, then you have to ask, what is this secret quirk that Star and Stripe possess? And why exactly would it be game over if All for One gets his hands on it? We are in a period of time where the stakes are higher than ever before. With the prison break happening after the events of the Paranormal Liberation War, all the escaped inmates who are causing havoc around the entire country of Japan are taking the complete attention of the heroes and police force who are trying to take back control of the country, which means no one has their attention on the mastermind himself, All for One, nor the major players in the Paranormal Liberation front. This gives the villains a big fat checkmate to the entire country of Japan, as they have officially won an unofficial game of hide and seek where no one can find their whereabouts, and now they can move on to their second step, gaining possession of All for Oneが欲したすべてのうちで唯一思い通りにならなかった力だ。During the events of the Paranormal Liberation War, All for One and Shigaraki placed himself in prime position to steal One for All from Deku, actively merging themselves into the One for All vestige world, trying to overpower the complete will of the One for All vestiges. In that moment, All for One mentioned that the hatred and emotion that Shigaraki had mixed with his will be able to overthrow the power of One for All, a statement he would immediately retract not soon after. All for One immediately knew the reason they weren't able to take One for All was because Shigaraki's body had not been perfected yet, and the amount of will and emotion they emitted inside of the One for All vestige world was not strong enough to sway the will of One for All. But what if I told you that All for One was wrong, and that he knows even if Shigaraki is at 100%, he still wouldn't be able to take One for All from Deku? Now you may ask, then why did All for One say his next plan is to take One for All? And more so, why does he feel so confident that he can take it? And the answers to both of those questions can be summed up in three simple words: Star and Stripe. Star and Stripe is the world's strongest woman. She hails from the home of the heroes, the land of the free, and sits at the zenith of heroes all around the world, making her the strongest hero in the world. All for One views Star and Stripe in the same light as he views All Might himself, someone who, if they were to intervene with his plans, he would surely lose, but they are too vital to All for One's end goal that he can't avoid them completely. Both All Might and Star and Stripe has a secret that if All for One gets his hands on, he will undoubtedly take over the world. All for One は One for All に固執していた。彼らは選ばれし者じゃない。繰り返される戦いの中で。And that secret is their quirk. However, considering that the current user of One for All is Deku, and he has not yet completely wielded the power that All Might use to defeat All for One, Deku is not considered a threat in the slightest to All for One's grand plan to take over the world. In spite of this, All for One believed it more important not to pursue One for All after Shigaraki's body had achieved 100%, and instead, All for One sought to obtain Star and Stripe's quirk, as it would make attaining One for All easier, even if Star and Stripe's intervention may threaten his survival. And now you're probably wondering, so what is Star and Stripe's quirk? We know this quirk has to be something special. It was great enough to make her the greatest hero in the world, powerful enough to make All for One fear her intervention in his affairs, and unique enough to make the greatest hero of all time, All Might, mentor her in some capacity. But more important than anything is that it would assist All for One in taking One for All. So wouldn't it be crazy if it was pretty much One for All?
I'm losing patience! Okay, that really hurt.
Quirks are defined as superhuman abilities that a person could have, and we categorize them to learn more on how these superhuman abilities are distributed. The three main quirk type categories are emitter, transformation, and mutant, and throughout the hundreds of abilities that we have seen in the story, there's a subsection of them that are more valuable than the others. Currently, we only have accounts of 5 quirks in the entire series that are categorized with this type of quirk, and it's no coincidence that this type of quirk grants access to being the most overpowered characters in the series. This secret subcategory that I'm talking about is
Do your best, Toshinori.
accumulation type quirks, which are defined as quirks that, in order to function properly, requires the user to accumulate something ahead of time, such as power, energy, mass, or a particular resource. The only quirks that are considered accumulation type quirks are fat absorption from Fat Gum, stress from Redestro, rewind from Eri, Fajin from Deku, and one for all. All quirks where you need to stockpile some form of energy for an infinite outsource, so long as your body can hold out that energy. Not just looking at the fact that she's the strongest hero in the world, but also considering that All For One needs her secret quirk in conjunction with a 100% Shigaraki to steal One For All from Deku. Star and Stripe most likely has an accumulation based quirk, enabling her to accumulate an incredible amount of raw power, enhancing all of her physical abilities far beyond normal capacity. And as a result of that, Star and Stripe possesses incredible strength, agility, and endurance. Factoring in that she seems to have a reputation of All Might status from All For One's depiction, it's likely that the reason Star and Stripes was able to keep up with All Might as her master is because they have the same quirk. All Might had One For All, but he grew to become the world's greatest hero because of the stockpiling ability inside of One For All, which is the exact quirk that All For One used to spark the creation of One For All itself. Being that you have other stockpile based quirks such as Eri's Rewind and even Deku's Fajin, especially considering that the properties of your quirk can be the exact same as somebody else, such as the fire from Endeavor and fire from all the other fire users, it's not far-fetched to believe that Star and Stripes was born with a stockpiling quirk and has cultivated her powers after All Might, who is her idol and her mentor. And if All For One can get his hands on the same ability that he used to create One For All, which would literally rival the energy that All Might used to defeat All For One would have more power than the entire One For All quirk as a whole, while merging that with the hatred and energy of a 100% Plus Ultra Shigaraki. And now comes the final question that I know you're asking. 100% Plus Ultra Shigaraki versus Star and Stripe. How will the battle end? And well,